Let me mute
Welcome,
myself.
everyone. Welcome. Give it a few more minutes just to let people filter in.
And just make sure if you're not talking, you mute it too. That way it doesn't get a lot of background noise. If there's some shit going on around you. Okay. So yeah, guys, we're live on YouTube right now as well. Whoops. We're live on YouTube right now, just so you guys know, on the Trickle Up YouTube channel. And we'll be making clips from this bad boy. If you guys are all in the group here, I'll be making clips of the Q&A section and stuff like that and different. I'll be chopping it up a little bit. So who we got here? We got boom, boom. There's Colleen. Oh, man. Okay.
Sean, are you still going to record this?
Yeah, we're gonna probably hit the record button. I think now's a good time. So, welcome everyone. This is the second of our UBI nights, the second of Policy Nerd Nights as part of our overall UBI series. Each month we try to cover a different issue as well as related policies that might help improve life for humanity. One of these policies, as many people are aware of, is UBI, Universal Basic Income. Those of you who attended our first panel might be familiar with the format of this. To recap, we have these wonderful speakers who will shortly be introduced, and one doubling as a moderator. This event we hope to teach you or pass on any wisdom from these speakers on how to actually talk about UBI to your friends, family, or maybe your dog. So I suppose without further ado, I'll introduce our moderator and speaker, host of the Trickle Up, Boyce Littlefield. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your Friday night to join us.
Absolutely. I'd rather be nowhere else.
Well, Boyce, if you want to take us away.
Okay, well, tonight we got this little panel together. So we got Matthew Austin. He's from Indiana. He's the Indiana Yang Gang kind of guy. We got Hannah Wan over in, I think it's San Francisco, if I can remember right.
Seattle.
Damn, I was way off. Same coast. It's a nice try. And then Tully from the Math Movement's going to be trickling in here, hopefully. We're going to be talking about universal basic income and how to discuss it and approach it, and how it came to be with people like Scott Santos dedicating his life to it. So, Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself?
All right. My name is Matt Austin. I call myself a redneck Jew from southern Indiana. Don't hold that against me. I have 15 years of door-to-door experience. So I've knocked on 100,000 plus doors in 20 different states. And I came along, learned about Andrew Yang on one of the presidential things. And that's where I learned about universal basic income. And so I was interested in $1,000 a month for myself, but then I realized how it doesn't matter for me. It really matters to make a huge difference for so many other people. And so I took the skills that I developed over 15 years and put them into action to win one caucus and have Andrew viable at 2 total caucuses in Iowa.
Nice.
That's a quick summary.
Good deal. So next we got Hannah Wan.
You're still muted, boys.
Oh, sorry about that. I keep muting myself. So next up, Hannah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. On the agenda it said 3 to 5 minutes each, so I actually have a little thing prepared. So first off, I wanted to thank California Yang Gang, specifically Sean, Sarah, and Jess for organizing this forum and for inviting me to share my experience. I'm an activist based out of Seattle. I'm also an advocate for universal basic income, the arts, and AAPI representation. I graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in philosophy, and I dropped out of Case Western Reserve School of Law. My professional experience ranges from staff accountant, teaching assistant for a coding boot camp, a project manager of software development, circulation manager for a cannabis business magazine, and a gig worker taking on jobs like delivering newspapers overnight, standing in line for football tickets, and being a magician's assistant. And that's all within the last 6 years. It's weird to say out loud. As an experienced choral singer, and an advocate specializing in the arts and anti-racism. I have about a decade of experience serving on the boards of arts organizations. I've been invited to speak on the topics of organizational diversity and how to make art forms more accessible, equitable, and inclusive. My journey as an activist actually started in 2008 with Ron Paul's presidential campaign. I was very tired of establishment politics from the get-go. I abandoned libertarianism after I saw what the Tea Party was really all about, hint it was racism, and I started engaging more in leftist movements, starting with Occupy Wall Street and Bernie's 2016 campaign. So in late 2018, I started following Andrew Yang's campaign and decided to go all in. I canvassed in Iowa for over a month. I joined the sorority of Yang. I was precinct captain. And then we went to Nevada to coordinate early voting pushes and caucus operations after Andrew dropped out because we knew the movement was bigger than him. I then joined David Kim's congressional campaign in LA as chief strategist and finance director, and I was able to get him the endorsements of Andrew Yang and Marianne Williamson. Shortly after that, I left to start the Testify for UBI project that aimed to get a panel of experts and everyday Americans to testify in front of Congress for UBI. So we did get an invitation from Representative Tim Ryan, but you know how politicians are. I also started organizing with Ground Game LA over the summer in support of Black Lives Matter and helped coordinate their first activist summer camp. Most recently, I traveled to Georgia to mobilize Asian voters for Oz Up in Warnock. Currently, I'm involved with Humanity Forward's Asian Leadership Council and serving on the board of Humanity First Movement, which is an organization built by former Yang Gang leaders to build out a national grassroots network. I'm also volunteering with Inca Movement to establish a presence on Clubhouse for UBI advocacy. So I am honored and excited to be here with some great panelists. I look forward to having an engaging discussion.
Awesome. Well, and you know, with me, I got the whole trickle up thing going right now. We're trying to build a competitive news network to compete with the Hill and the Young Turks, so on and so forth. And I've been doing the Yang thing for 2 years now, and I'm not gonna stop. I don't give a shit what happens. We're gonna keep on grinding this thing out, man, because we can't stop until we get human-centered capitalism that starts with the basement floor of universal basic income. We have to climb from there. So I think that it's important that everybody understands that there's a history behind this. There's people like Scott Santens and many, many before him that kind of been dedicating their life to it, you know? And so universal basic income is not a new topic. It's been around since the founding of this country. We all know that from Andrew Yang's stump speeches, you know, with different variations of it, of course. And then it's been passed through Congress twice during Nixon's time. And then Dr. Martin Luther King was fighting for it as well, his last go around. And then we've had people like Scott Santens, who has dedicated their life since 2000. I think it's 2017. Scott's been full-time advocacy for universal basic income and receiving a UBI from his patrons. And then, of course, we have Andrew Yang coming out, bringing it to the forefront on the national stage of the presidential campaign, man. And here we are. We got the Yang Gang, and we are fired up and going to make shit happen. And so I want to ask you guys, when it comes to knocking on doors, right? We've all knocked on doors, I assume. I know Hannah, I'm not sure. Matt, did you knock on doors in Iowa?
Oh yeah.
Of course. So when you guys went up to a door and you're approaching that door, and how do you intend to maybe start the conversation as like, what's your feeler to say, I wonder if this person's even interested or even open to the idea? Do you guys have strategies you take on to kind of flirt it out there and just throw that little nugget out there to see if they'll bite on that hook? You know, I'll start with you.
I think I should go first because
Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Matt has a better answer than I do. So I'm not that great at doors. I'm not great at these interactions that are kind of stilted and then I have a script in front of me. So the first few times I knock on a door with a specific script, it's trash, right? And so as I go along, it's like I pick out the most important parts of the script, most important points that I want to make at this door. Like, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to do voter ID? Are we trying to gauge what people are interested in this upcoming election? So I just cater the script to how I talk. That's, I mean, and I know, and a lot of stuff that I learned is from Matt himself. So I'll let him take from here.
So when I approach a door, the first thing that I know is that I'm interrupting them in one way or another. I have no idea what's happening in the house. And so there's three things that they're going to be wondering in their mind. And so my job is to answer those questions without them asking them. So they're wondering, who are you? How long is this going to take? And what are you doing? And so I quickly say, hey, my name is Matt. I'll be super fast. I'm just out here for whatever the cause is. I'm out here because of the caucus is coming up, because of the Senate race, whatever it might be. And then I say again, I'll be super fast. And then I'm just going to address the gorilla in the room. I'm going to say, are you planning on voting in the caucus? Are you voting in the Senate race? Have you registered to vote? I just get to the point really quickly. So once I've gotten the yes, they are, or no, they aren't, then I know where to go next. So once again, answering those three questions quickly: who are you? How long are you going to be here? And what are you doing? And then I'm going to start asking them questions, because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Bingo.
And so I show that I care about them by asking them questions. What matters to them? Because I know why I like UBI, but that doesn't matter at all. What matters is why they would like UBI. And then I'm going to ask them about other people they know, and then I have stories that I can talk about other people. I can talk about our cleaning lady, how she adopted a 3-year-old child who's now 6, and how universal basic income would be a massive help to her, or my grandparents. And so I try and find out through asking questions about them what angle to take. And then I use stories, or I ask them about people in their lives. How would that make an impact on those people? So that's kind of just the initial thing. But most of the conversations I had were 5 to 15 minutes, really fast. And I try and have quick conversations to get to the point, because those folks are busy and need to get back to what they're doing. But the real key is doing the follow-up, going back and developing those relationships. And that's why I did so well in Iowa. I had ladies inviting me to their home where they invited friends there, and I got to answer questions in depth. But that really comes back to caring about them, caring about their town, because they don't care about me. I'm some random dude. They don't care about anything else. They only care about themselves and what affects them. And so that's where my focus goes. How can what I'm doing right now benefit you?
Right.
And that really resonates with folks.
Well, I know when I knocked on doors in Iowa, I knew one thing is they didn't give a crap about what I thought when it come right down. They didn't want my opinion. My opinion means zero in Iowa. I'm from Michigan. Shut up. What are you doing here? Why are you here? Like you were saying, Matt. And I was the same thing. I knocked on doors with Tom and Kai Watson and this kid from Denmark. And, oh man, it's one lady from Ireland. She was super cool. And it was just fun to get to just walk. I love walking up to strangers, first of all. That's my favorite thing to do. But when you knock on someone's door, like you said, Matt, you're interrupting whatever it is they're doing. You're interrupted. I always start out, I'm sorry to interrupt. That's like my first thing I say is, sorry to interrupt you. Do you have 5 minutes? I would just start with a question, a proposition. That's all I do is like, do you have 5 minutes? And they said no. Okay, well, I'd hand them a brochure, and I always left my phone number because I don't care if someone calls or texts me. It doesn't bother me. So like I put my personal cell phone, my full name on there and said, I'm Boyce Littlefield. Here's my phone number. You guys can write down if you want to text me, 269-252-3930. My lines are open, right? But like I put that out there. Like I'm a human being. I'm a real person. I want to talk to you. If you have questions later, when you have time, if you want to text me and ask questions, you can. Like that was my approach, was be as vulnerable as possible and open, and say I'm here to answer your questions. And if they had time, then you go into that whole spiel like you're saying, Matt, is are you registered to vote, first of all? If not, can we help you get there? There's a deadline on Thursday or something, right? And then if they are registered, is do you have who's your? I never asked who you voting for. I say, who's your top 3 right now? If you was to vote top 3, that way we wouldn't feel pressure to say, if I don't say the right person, you're not going to like me kind of thing, or picking a side. And then I'd ask them what their top 3. And that top 3 kind of told me, were they leaning centrist, moderate, or a little more to the left of that, left of center. And that kind of helped me kind of understand where they're at. And that's my biggest approach, was apologize for interrupting when you knock on a door. Your opinion doesn't matter. Ask them questions. And once you get those answers, you got to, whatever it is, the engagement, you got to make it personal. Like you were saying, personal, like ask them, how many people's in your town? How many people do you think live below poverty? And I'd actually shock them with the everysinglemonth.com thing where you could put in the zip code for where you're at, knocking on doors or something, and ask them how many people do you think percentage wise lives below poverty level in your zip code? And they would be like, oh, I don't know, a couple hundred. And it turns out it's thousands every time. It's always like 10 times what they thought it was. And you let them know how dire it is. And then you can say, okay, if a universal basic income comes to you, to your neighborhood, it's $1,000 a month per person every month. So if you have 1,000 people in your town, it's $1 million a month. That's $1 million for a small town. I live in a small town of 1,200, so it'd be like $1,000 a month for 1,000 people, because excluding kids. So once you show them hard numbers and be like, do you think that would, if they're talking about, if their number one concern is the economy, that's how I kind of pitch UBI, stuff like that. And if it's ending poverty or something like that, you kind of find whatever you cater to it. I like you, Hannah. I don't like the scripts. I read it once, then I'm like, okay, I get what they kind of want, and just I like to wing it. It's more personable anyway. But yeah, I really wish Tully was here. Tully, God dang it, I'm gonna kick your butt, dude. But yeah, so so when you guys got to those doors, you get to that little thing. What was your biggest pushback? When you say universal basic income, what was your most common, let's say your most common pushback was what?
How is it paid for?
Yeah. Okay.
Was typically what I would hear, and most people didn't even know what universal basic income was.
Little
So
education.
I had to give them the whole education with that. But it was really effective. The town that I was knocking in, they had just lost their grocery store to.
Where was that at?
Wapello.
Wapello. Okay.
Iowa.
Okay.
So 2,000 people, just over 2,000 people, be about $1.5 million coming to town every month.
And they lost their grocery store.
Yeah, and they had food delivery, and so most people would get food delivered, but there were a lot of elderly folks who weren't tech savvy, and they'd have to drive half an hour, 45 minutes just to go get groceries. So that was a story that I used over and over again, and people really related to it. You have $1.5 million coming to town every day or every month.
Yep.
Do you think a grocery store is more likely to reopen here? You think more businesses are more likely to reopen?
Absolutely.
And so that, because it was something that everybody knew, it really resonated with them. They also had a time where I met a lady who's one of her dogs had passed away from drinking water that they had to go on a boil order the previous summer, and that was a big thing that I talked about, was updating infrastructure in rural areas, and that really resonated with them. So once again, it's asking those questions to find out those things. So, but it was really with UBI was people just didn't understand it and didn't understand how it was paid for, and the misconception that they were going to have to that it was going to cost them more than what they were going to get out of it. Yeah. And so taking the time just to go through the numbers and show them that, especially using a value-added tax of 10%, they would have to spend $120,000 a year in order to equal the amount they would get from universal basic income, and then asking them, how many people do you know that spend $120,000 a year?
Yeah, not earn, spend.
Spend, yeah, very few.
Spend.
Who are those folks that spend $120,000 a year?
Those are millionaires.
They're really rich folks.
Yes.
So they're the ones that are going to be paying in a lot more.
Right.
So it ends up being a net benefit. So just kind of sitting down and explaining that it's going to be the richest folks and the corporations that are going to be contributing the majority of the taxes to pay for this UBI.
Yeah. Hannah, what you got?
Yeah. Well, if they're not shutting the door in my face or trying to run me out of a neighborhood because I'm canvassing for a Democrat, I get, well, I don't want socialism.
Yep.
And and that just, right away, it's like, okay, I kind of see like where their thought process might be going. So I just had it in my brain. But yeah, I lean more towards arguments about building up small businesses. Why would you open up a business where nobody has money to spend? Or like, you work hard, you pay taxes. What are you getting from government? I mean, the government's like kind of doing nothing for you unless you are in a certain demographic, or you have kids, or you're getting married. It's like there's all these programs that are discrete and cater to specific populations, and it doesn't apply to you. So people aren't interested. It's like, what's the point of this bloated government if it's not going to help me directly? Well, UBI is one program that is light. It's very easy to administer, and it will directly impact your life. And also, you work hard. You are part of this society. You helped build it in one way or another. And so you should participate in the profits of it. And the way the system is set up now, it's not going to you. It's going to people at the top. And so telling people that they deserve a payout for the hard work that they are doing.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest pushback I got was also like you, Hannah, was this socialism, the big bad S word, right? And I always would approach it. It depended on I had to evaluate the situation of the home I'm going to in the neighborhood. And then I would always look up the statistics ahead of time, like 25% of this zip code lives below poverty level. Then most likely over 20, probably closer to 50% receive some sort of social safety net program, be it housing, food stamps, healthcare, whatever it was, right? And so if I could safely assume without being an asshole, that they may have one point in their life, not today, sometime in the past, you never know, just maybe, have you ever received a social benefit of anything of any sort? So they say socialism. We already have socialism. I say, have you ever received any kind of a social safety net program, any kind of help from the government as far as daycare expenses? I've done that when the kids were younger. Food stamps, healthcare, all that kind of stuff. And, 50% of the time they say, yes, I have at one point in my life, Even unemployment is socialized benefits, right? So I included unemployment in that too. So pretty much 9 times out of 10, someone's gotten at least unemployment, if not one of those programs. And I ask them, what's the problem with the programs now? And they'd always say it's underfunded, or it's too short, or if you work too much, you lose benefits, right? So I always framed it as, if you've ever received it, did it get you out of poverty? Did that program get you out of poverty? Are you out of poverty now? Did it catapult you to the next level of the hierarchy, the survival hierarchy? And 9 times out of 10 is no. So I'm like, okay, so welfare doesn't work, and it's means tested and full of bureaucracy. So you got to pay people to pay people to pay people to pay people to pay people, so you can beg them to prove how poor you are, that you're good enough now, you're doing bad enough to be good enough to qualify for this program, only for 3 months, because you're going to come back and do it all. You're going to grovel all over again. You're going to take a day off of work that you can't afford to do. Like all those types of things. You can't stay too long. You got to go pick your kids up. You can't come in too early. You got to drop them off. All these variables, they make you jump through these hoops. And I always tell them, welfare doesn't work. I'm a 3rd generation welfare recipient when I was a kid coming up. And if my mom worked 28 hours a week, we'd get $200 a month in food stamps. If she worked 30 hours a week and made $10 more, we'd lose $50 in food stamps, right? So it was punishing. It was a snare more than a safety net, because once it got you, man, it's hard to get out. And so that's why I kind of pitched it. It's like, okay, now we're saying for every dollar I can give my mom, they gave my mom in welfare, it cost $1 to get it there. So it's you got to spend $2 to give you $1. That's very inefficient. Do you think, then I'd say, is welfare inefficient? Of course. And then you can kind of go like that. Whoops, let me kill that. But then you could say, okay, then how do we make it better? We just give the money straight to the people. Like you're saying, Hannah, it's much more efficient to just give the money to the people. And they'll say, you can't give people money to do nothing. I was like, of course not. We're already doing it though, just so you know. Now we're gonna give you money to do anything you want, include start a business. You don't have to pretend you're not married and move out of your girlfriend's back door so they watch you move and you circle that shit right back around. You know what I mean? Like, it's all these games you got to play. No more games. We trust you. You're an adult. You're a human. You're worth it. Here's $1,000 a month. Take care of yourself. You know, like, that's how I've always pitched it, is especially when it comes to welfare, to say this is going to give people what they need to get out of welfare. The end goal is there should be no welfare. That's the end goal. There should be no welfare, no homelessness. And universal basic income is the first step to get to that goal. Welfare, it doesn't work. You know, we have 500,000 homeless people and counting now, that with the pandemic, and we have a housing crisis coming, you know. So that's kind of always framed things in that kind of sense as the big bag socialism, but it's inefficient socialism that's actually hurting this country. It's inefficiency and the bureaucracy and the red tape. That's how I've always approached it. So how do you guys, so there's people you knock on doors and sometimes they're like, you know what? I barely even vote. I only vote for the president. That's it. I don't give a shit who's in Congress. I really don't. They don't make any difference. They don't help me. You know, do you guys have a way of coaxing people into maybe prodding them to say, hey, you know, if you did this, you could make a difference. Your vote actually matters. And this is how. Do you guys have a sales pitch for that type of approach?
So those folks are tough. In sales, we say there's 70% of people are going to give you a no matter what. 10%, you can, as long as you don't screw it up, 10% are going to buy. And it's those other 20% that you can actually influence based on your skill level. So sometimes you just have to take the no and walk away, and that's totally fine because it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
But to your question, Boyce, it comes back down to finding out what matters to them. So that's where I'll ask a question. If there were a reason that would cause you to vote, what would that be? Would it be because this elected official said, I will never support another war? Is it because they would bring medical services closer to your rural area? What is it for you? And so I'll just throw out some ideas and then stop talking and see what they say. Because only what matters to them is what's going to matter to me. So that's what I'm going to try and find out, is if it was the end of the world, what would cause them to actually take action? And are they going to answer that every time? No.
Nope.
But you've got to put your best foot forward to give them that chance to say that.
Okay, Hannah, what you got?
Yeah, so when I was in Georgia doing voter registration and door knocking, I did get some people who were just not engaged at all. It's like, I don't even care about voting. And I did have to lead with, hey, well, would $2,000, in your bank account help? Would actually receiving money help you? Like, did you receive the last stimulus check? Like, did that help you? What if you got another one? So just bring it down to basics, like something that would affect them. And from there, if they're still kind of like, I don't know about voting, then I would say, well, you know what? All you got to do is you register to vote and just vote for these people. And people like me will do the rest. Like, you can just sit back, just check the box on the form, and myself and other activists like me will work hard to get you the money that you deserve, and just turn it into a team effort. And all they need to do is this one little action, and that will help us and the movement and everyone else try to get their money. So in that way, it's like you kind of got to like bring it down from the philosophical arguments down to the real life money. It's like, this is money in your pocket. And this is how the little thing that you can do to help make that happen.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges we're going to, we have faced in the past, of course, is the education piece, like you're talking about, Matt, is introducing it for the first time. You really feel like you're running uphill in the quicksand, but you have to take that step, man, that you have to be the one that introduces it. And then you got to introduce logical arguments for it. And then, take away the excuses they want to bring up. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, that's completely correct. In the end, we're planting seeds.
Right.
For many of us, the first time we heard about universal basic income, we were like, "Oh,
yeah.
that's a scam! Get that
Yep.
crap out of here!"
Yep.
And so, think about your own personal journey and what was it that caused you to latch onto that or to turn the corner. And it could have taken you 3, 6, 9 months. Who knows? So in the end, it's really just about planting that seed and letting that grow and just kind of checking back in and educating more and more. It's a process.
Yeah.
That's for darn sure.
I think we had an advantage we really didn't know that we needed to take advantage of in Iowa far enough ahead in advance. It can't be the week of, right? We really got all hell broke loose in there. But if we could have had like 2 months ahead of time, if we could have been more organized, more financially stable, you know, which what it comes down to is donations. If we'd have got that second quarter money to match that third, if we got 10 million in the second quarter, the summer would have been gangbusters.
100%.
Because to me, if we could, like, another way I've approached things is let's talk about like information. How do people get information? How do they not know about universal basic income? Why not? Who's their news sources? How they find information, and it kind of helps you also understand why they think the way they do and how they're not say biased, but they have the bias has been used against them to manipulate them to say Joe Biden's going to save us. Still didn't get a UBI, guys. We still haven't gotten a goddamn check. Son of a bitch. Been a month. Pisses me off still. Sorry, guys. I get pissed.
Yeah, right there, voice. It's a good idea to work on people's sense of outrage, even when that was going on. So if they're like a Republican or a conservative, say, okay, so Silicon Valley and Wall Street deserve free money and subsidies and all this stuff, and we get zero. Like Yang said, did you vote for the 2008 bailout? I don't remember voting for that.
Right.
They're the ones. So the people who caused the crisis and the people who gamble with our money as a nation get it all back. It's like they get a cheat and we get our homes taken away and less opportunities and stuff like that. So you got to get charisma and you got to tie it with reason. That's the best thing I ever heard.
Well, that's something I like the saying of, we privatize the gains, we socialize the debt. You know, when something goes wrong, we all got to pay for it. But when things go right, we all don't get the benefit from it. And that's the difference of UBI. It flips it on its head. And so my big thing is, Matt, did you ever have experiences where people said, I heard on Fox, MSNBC, CNN, Young Turks, The Hill, Bo of the Fifth Column, whomever? Like, have you ever experiences where people talked about their news sources yourself, or is that something you have to kind of bring up on your own?
No, I actually didn't run into that very often. I was surprised at that, but that might be more the small rural town aspect of it.
Yeah.
But that, I think how you addressed it in our previous conversation was really, really was really good. Finding out what their news sources are to have an idea of what their objections are going to be,
right?
So that you can then cover their objections in advance.
Yeah,
and that's the key. Whoever gets to it first is going to win. Doesn't mean that they're going to be convinced, but you're taking their fire away from them and addressing the questions that they already have in their mind.
Well, in some places they never told. It's possible they could be wrong.
Yeah.
Like the host, Rachel Maddow, she could be wrong. Oh, shocker. Tucker Carlson could be lying to you. Duh. You know, like they appeal to authority on some of these places. That's why they go to CNN, MSNBC, the Main Street media. But if someone is open to the Hill or the Young Turks or Reuters or anything else, you know, all the Patriot ones or whatever, you know, that's something I also did when I did the door knocking. I had the door knockers pre-filled out. I had a stack that was podcast links. I actually took the time to write those sons of bitches out, like the link to the Joe Rogan podcast, Sam Harris, the Breakfast Club, and H3H3, all these different things, and be like, like I said, you find out where they got their information from. And if they say, you know, I just watched CNN, I was like, hey, have you ever heard of, do you guys listen to podcasts? Yes or no. Okay. Do you watch YouTube? Yes or no. And that gives you an idea of, okay, then you should go check out this podcast. You should go check this out on YouTube. You know, it's another way of doing a lot of work after you leave, that seed, that's a big ass seed right there. If you tell them Joe Rogan podcast and Sam Harris and H3H3 and the Breakfast Club and stuff like that, those are the ones I got texts from like 3 days later a couple times in Iowa. I was a precinct captain in Clinton, Iowa, which is oh man, I think it was like 25,000 people. It's not a big town, but it's for Iowa, it's big. There's so much vast emptiness in the middle. But if people listen to podcasts, that's another great avenue. Then you can give them links. My biggest thing was I always gave them my phone number, man, to say, or I'd ask them, do you think would you like my number to text me, or I could give you my email if you want to email me some questions or something you'd like to talk more about it. And rarely people wanted it, but I always offered it. You know what I mean? Like that's another way of, if you give them a podcast link and then ask questions. I've had younger people engage in that type of approach to say, if it's like a 25-year-old in Iowa and there's a college kid or something, or 23 or whatever, I'd be like, you listen to podcasts, go check out Joe Rogan's interview with Andrew Yang, and then hit me up and we'll talk about it. And I've had 3 times total that worked because it's younger people. But the more you have these strategies, I think it's long-term effect. That seed becomes like an actual bulb. It's actually a plant that can sprout now, and you're the person watering it, with ideas and information. Yeah, Hannah, you got any kind of examples like that where you've found some success?
Yeah, in terms of like a general strategy, like even if you don't know what their disposition is before you start talking to them, once they start talking and bringing up the objections, a really powerful thing to do is say, you know what, I thought the same thing. And this is how I came to understand UBI through this context, and just work through the thought process with them. Because in many cases, when we first heard about UBI, we had the same exact questions of like, oh, what about inflation? What about this? Or what about that? But won't people be lazy? You go through that same thought process. So you kind of have to keep that thought process alive when you talk to somebody, and just meet them where they're at and bring them to how you come to understand things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just like to point out that when people talk about they like CNN or Fox or MSNBC or whatever, I always tell them, have you ever noticed that it depends on who the president is how they approach it, and it goes both ways, because Obama did A, Trump did B, and guess what? 2 different reactions from the same news sources when they did the exact same thing, like deportations or whatever, right? Or drone attacks or whatever it is, taxes. And that's kind of, I like to point out the hypocrisies to get them to kind of be like, yeah, that is suspicious. Maybe I should look at different sources. It's another way to poke holes in that argument of a default to authority is another approach to be like, you know what? I used to trust them too. Like you're saying, Hannah, humanize it and be like, yeah, I trusted that too until I really started paying attention, and say, okay, let's pick one thing that I know a lot about, like A, B, or C. Let's say it's healthcare. And then you go, okay, I'm going to watch the same day on Fox, then I'm going to watch it on CNN, then I'm going to watch it on MSNBC and blah, blah, blah. And then it becomes painfully obvious how biased they are and how they'll twist any narrative to fit their need. They'll twist any fact or data point to fit their narrative. And that's another way I've done it is just be like, listen, man, they're not the know all end all. They work for profitable people to make money. That's right, Matt. Rub those fingers, baby. Rub those nickels. That's another good way of just saying, listen, man, they're trying to make money off of our suffering. They're dividing us because it's a winning strategy to divide us all. So we argue and click, because the clicks get more reaction from negative feedback than positive support. That's why Trump was a gold mine on both sides of the aisle. And then even that didn't work for Fox News at the end. It blew up in their face, But so let's talk about approaching people that have different ideologies, like you were saying earlier, Matt. When you approach someone that is farther left, like the farthest of left of everything is like someone says, I'm a communist or a socialist, like a literal socialist. How do you guys approach that person?
I'm going to say, great. You're going to love this. And if they're on the far right, I'm going to say, great. You're going to love this.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to take my typical approach. But when they bring up their objections, as Hannah was saying, brilliantly. I'm just going to agree with them. And so what Hannah did was, it's a feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. You can say, I felt the same way, or this person felt the same way. And what they found out once they did their research was this. So you're agreeing with them. You're saying somebody else has felt the same exact way that you are relating to them. And you're saying, here's what I found out. And so that works no matter which end you're on. But if we're talking far left, then I'm just going to talk about helping people. I'm going to talk about all the stories that I have of how my grandpa turned 94 yesterday, and how they're struggling with retirement. People retire and they live so much longer, and Social Security isn't taking care of business, and it's supposed to run out in the 2030s at some point in time. Or I'll talk, like I said, about my cleaning lady. I'll talk about all these people, and then I'll ask them, do you know anybody that $1,000 a month would make a difference for? And then I'll let them tell me stories on that, so that they're convincing themselves. So the lefties are pretty simple and easy to do, but you want to collect the stories and you want to repeat them and just make it simple. So when I was knocking on doors, that's what I would be doing. I'd knock on the door. As I was waiting, I would be reciting these stories, reciting people's names, so that when they answered the door, I was ready. And I could knock off 3 or 4 names, and they heard one person's name they recognized. They immediately thought, oh, this guy's a part of the community. And they wanted to talk to me because I seemed so knowledgeable about their hometown.
That's a great point, man. Make them tell their story. That's cool, man. I like that a lot, actually.
And then you can use that story down the line.
That's right. Next block over.
Yep.
100%. Jimmy 2 blocks away says, yada, yada. That's pretty slick, man.
Exactly right.
You're a slick little booger, Matthew.
I hope so. After 100,000 plus doors.
100,000. Wait. 100,000.
Oh yeah.
Over what span of time?
15 years.
Okay. Damn, you've been doing it for 15. Bro, kudos to you, man. I'm new to the game. 15 years, man. I ain't done shit for 15 years of my life.
It's a love-hate relationship. Love the freedom. But, man, there are definitely rough days. You just got to push through them.
Yeah, you get those doors slammed sometimes for a minute. You're just like, oh, boy.
Not that often. You'd be surprised. You don't get doors when you have a good attitude and you're treating people well. You don't get doors slammed on you very often. And when you do, you just laugh and skip to the next door.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't matter.
So what about you, Hannah? When you quote someone that says, I'm pro-communism, or communism hasn't been done right yet, like we should do it here better than Russia. We're better than Russia. We should be the best communists this world's ever seen, and stuff like that. How do you approach that?
Oh man, that is my wheelhouse. I just wanted to go back to what Matt was saying about different approaches based on what somebody says, if they're like far lefty or far right. I just posted something in the chat. It's a document that I got from a session that I attended, an anti-poverty conference. And this person was presenting, I think, the moral foundations theory on how people, I guess, build their worldview based on, conservative or progressive and libertarian. So like for conservatives, it's more effective to appeal to hierarchies of fairness and maybe personal freedom. And with progressives appeal more to care and egalitarianism. So I think that's an interesting document to look at. So like how to do different approaches and what is more convincing to somebody based on their worldview. So going back to socialists, when I was in LA, I actually started organizing with Ground Game LA, which is a very lefty space. I did the whole so we didn't really talk about like how to talk to like friends and people, but I did my tactic of just do the whole slow burn thing where I started attending meetings, mentioned that I supported UBI, but not in like a pushy way, and started forming friendships and just generally become regarded as a respected peer. So when UBI would eventually come up in conversation, they would point to me, or if we're having like a social watch party, a Fiddler on the Roof, they would joke around and say stuff like, hey, Tepe could have totally used some UBI. So So when I made this pitch to this group about UBI specifically, I started out by talking about our shared values of wanting to help people in our community who needed help the most. So by now, they should know that I care and our values are aligned. And so from there, I kind of try to out-lefty them. So when they talk about, oh, we're going to go do away with the social safety net, I say, well, the safety net is trash. I mean, it's based on means testing, which is dehumanizing. It doesn't help the people who need it the most, and it's not there for people when they really need it. So essentially, in order to be caught by the safety net, you have to fill out forms and jump through hoops while you're falling. And it's not a great situation to be in. So number one, pointing out the failures of the social safety net and the benefits of how UBI is way more equitable, way more humanizing, just giving people choice to do what they want with and telling them that, hey, you have the power to take care of yourself. Here's the money that you need, and we're going to stay out of it. We're not going to say you need to come in this many times. You can only buy this type of milk, this type of cheese, and just like kind of be an overlord of their lives in that way. I also called out the recent trend of activists only advocating for workers who create capital for someone else and yet still call themselves socialists.
Yeah.
I said that they're not recognizing the work being done by stay-at-home parents, caretakers, volunteers, artists, and activists. And I agree that anyone who works full-time should not live in poverty, but I want to take it further and say that no one should live in poverty in this society.
Yeah.
And so that seemed to like intrigue some people, and also, and I just try to use the language that they use, like the cultural language and some of the memes that are in that community. And I just kind of capped it off by saying, if we're not in a place to seize the means of production, then seize the means of profit. And then I ended my pitch by saying that UBI is not a libertarian Trojan horse, but a gateway drug to socialism. And in that way, it is kind of true. I mean, it's not going to completely dismantle capitalism, which is what they feel is a fundamental flaw of our society and a cause of many of the ills of society right now. But at the very least, UBI will mitigate it. And so I tried to address some of the concerns that they have on like a philosophical level, and also with real life examples.
Yeah. I think the biggest success I've had when talking to someone that literally says communism has been done right. So it's a rough place to start, but I can work with that, right? So to me, I say what typically they say is capitalism is the enemy of the people. You end poverty by ending capitalism, which is kind of silly. But I don't say that out loud. But to me, typically I've kind of come to people and say, okay, what's the goal of communism? And typically is to make sure everyone has equal footing and equal representation, or not representation, but no one gets left behind. Everyone lives at the same space, right? I was like, okay, so then who decides that? Who draws that line? One person. One person decides how valuable every person is in the entire system. It is capitalism, just one capitalist. So there is no such thing as communism is capitalism. It's just one person's in charge of the capital. So that's a big paternal bullshit sandwich as far as I'm concerned. And so then I kind of push back on capitalism exists even in communism. That one person's in charge. I'd rather have more people in charge. We should still be in charge. So I think capitalism or communism is just anti-people when it comes right down to it, as far as freedom to choose, the freedom to change jobs. They tell you what job you got. And I fucking hate federal jobs guarantee advocacy. Is just a joke. Because then you're saying it's forced labor. And if you can't be forced into labor, then you're forced into poverty. That's not a choice. That's not a freedom. That's and I won't insult people and say it's slave wages, but it is demoralizing and demeaning and dehumanizing to say, if you can't, like you said, Han, if you can't work for someone else and make them more money, you're not enough. You're not good enough. You're not valuable enough. You're not valued at all. So that's when I bring up the universal basic income to say, I don't give a shit what you do. Do something, do anything, or do nothing. It's your life to live. Here's a basic income, and you can make as much more as you want. You can leverage it. You can invest it, or you can pay for your kids' college, whatever. That's kind of always approached the farther left people is like, rein it in a little bit. Like, come on now, you can't say communism hasn't been done right, because the premise of communism is a failed experiment, because one capitalist decides what the rest of us pawns on their chessboard, like what square you get to go to next, and they decide who the pawns are. They decide who the rooks and the knights are on their chessboard, and so it's just an easy point for me personally. So what is the so when you approach someone that's more centrist, let's just all get along. Let's debate. Let's conservatives have good points and liberals have good points, or whatever. Like, how do you guys get the people that just want to keep things the same, the moderates? Like, how do you get a moderate to be okay with progressive policies like that? Matt, we'll go with you.
That's where I start talking about how things currently aren't working. You can always use the Einstein quote. You do the same thing over and over again, you get the same result.
Yep.
And I talk about, what has worked in the 20th century. Okay, well, is that going to continue to work in the 21st century?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. We're seeing the ills. And so I try and just make a stark comparison between where we were and where we are. And that usually helps them understand. It doesn't flip them by any means, but it starts them on the path to thinking in a different manner, because you've got to kind of shake the tree and see what falls out to see where you can move forward in that. So I just try. It doesn't work as often as I would like, but it's really just the comparison that I try and get them to see that their ideas might be outdated and that there's new ways to think about moving forward with society. Yeah.
Well, just so you guys know, that dinging was Tully. He just wanted me to let you guys know he passed on his apologies. He had a medical emergency with his dog. His dog got bit by another. And so he's at a vet clinic and his dog taken care of, stitched up and stuff. So Tully, I apologize for being a shithead for a second there. Still love you, kid. Hannah, how do you approach that moderate point of view?
Right. So for me, a centrist doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a centrist position. It's just a point relative to two extremes. So when somebody says they're a centrist or a moderate, I just treat them like a conservative. Because if you look at surveys, Medicare for All is popular.
Yep.
UBI is actually popular now. So if they're saying no, I'm not into that, well, you're in one extreme and you don't know it yet. So I just pop out like my suite of arguments on the conservative side. And actually, I have a document that my co-founder of Testify for UBI drew up. And it's just like conservative arguments for UBI, and it's been reviewed by people who are conservative and aren't necessarily within the UBI movement. It's just basically taking issues that are valuable to conservatives and giving it real credence and treating it seriously and seeing how UBI could help in those situations. So in terms of moderates and centrists, it doesn't exist. It's all conservative.
Well, I guess that moves on to the next point of how you approach a conservative. Like for me with the conservatives, I try to break down what does conservative mean to you, because conservative means it's a pretty wide swath, right? So if someone says I like the deregulation of blah blah blah, okay, I like the tax system the way it is because it creates jobs, or they're better at managing money than most people. They'll know what to do with it to create more jobs and blah, blah, blah. So it kind of gives you an idea of what type of conservative, or sometimes they're socially conservative, the militant theists and whatnot. And so it kind of gives you an idea of what type of conservative this person is. And especially when it comes to abortion, that's those conservative single issue voters like abortion, guns, all that kind of shit, right? Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. like you say, Matt, well, I got good news for you. There's a thing called UBI, and wouldn't you want to buy more guns, like, or whatever, or, and if it's vice, or if it's something else, like they say, it's about freedom of religion, or abortion's the big one, guys. That's the biggest pushback I got back. Oh, those are all great ideas. Is he a Democrat? I always say he's running under the Democratic ticket. Because I don't think he's a Democrat. He's actually a progressive. He's way more valued to me. But so I always tell people, what's the number one reason for abortion is lack of resources. I think it's 70%. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, in the comments or whatever. But
It's somewhere around that.
yeah, it's like 70-ish% of all abortions because of fear of lack of resources now or in the future, or for the rest of their life if they have a kid, right? So that's another good, like you said, Matt, I got good news for you. You want less abortions? UBI. I feel like it's but if you're there to successfully push the idea of universal, that's the whole point of this conversation. How do you get universal basic income to benefit people? So, that's my success with conservatives too, is I attack the news sources. I agree with you, like you're saying, Matt. Oh yeah, CNN's biased, MSNBC's biased. I say just as much as Fox is. They're like, well, I don't know about Fox. Well, Fox has their biases. Well, yeah, they do. Then you get them to let down their guard. You admit there's a fault over here. Then they can admit to the fault on their side of the aisle a little bit. Let them not want to stand so firmly in their stance. Be like, well, they all got some bullshit there. A lot of opinion shows that are they're not factual, And that's where I found the most success, is kind of chip away at the foundation of default to authority and those single issue voters, Second Amendment, the 2A people, the 1A people, and the abortions or whatever it is. Those are the big three: guns, religion, and killing babies, as they call it. And I don't dare argue about that shit, because I mean, that'll take me 2 hours to break that shit down. But Matt, how do you approach like the hard right conservatives, either politically right for economic reasons, tax purposes, entrepreneurship, or cultural conservatism? How do you approach those different types of conservatives?
So there's numerous different ways. We're going to find conservatives all over the country. However, we're also going to find more rural areas. So I focus on the decline of those rural areas, how a lot of the younger people are moving out of those rural areas. I talk about how addressing directly how many people are in your town, this is how much money is going to be coming into town. Would that make a difference? Yes. Personally, for me, if we got UBI, I think we would see a massive explosion of arts and music. I believe people would be moving out to rural areas because it's so much less expensive to live there. I think we would see home ownership increase. One of my favorite points is I don't want the government telling me what to do with my resources. I want to do whatever I want to. And so this is the government trusting you to do what's best for you. And now people always come back with, well, what about the people that are going to buy drugs, that are going to buy alcohol, do bad things with it? And my focus is not on them. They're going to do it anyways. They're already doing it.
Yeah, they're already doing it.
This isn't going to change that. What this is going to do is this is going to take the single mom, Jamie, who's got 2 kids because her husband passed away. This is going to make her life much easier. I'm focusing on the 2 income family who are still living at a level of poverty while working, 2 adults working 40 hours a week. So I'm focusing on all the positives that this is going to happen instead of all the negatives that's going to happen. So that's where my focus goes, is the resurgence of rural America. We need to make rural America stand on its own 2 feet again. We need to make sure that we have the power to do with our resources what we want to. And this is the government trusting you. This is giving the power back to workers to strike against corporations and have the resources to strike long term to get what's in their best interest.
Yep.
I'll talk about women in battered situations, why they can't leave, which is common. It doesn't matter, rural, city, whatever. And so I'll just keep bringing these things up and then try and find stories. Do you know anybody that's dealt with going on strike? that's
Mhm.
been in a battered or has been in a bad relationship,
Mhm.
et cetera, to once again bring these ideas back around to reality, to their personal reality.
Yeah.
Because when they can see it benefiting themselves or somebody else,
Mhm.
it becomes that much more real.
Yeah. Their
So
lived experience.
that's where my focus. That's exactly where my focus goes.
Yeah, man, that's a great point, man. You got anything else you want to throw in there, Hannah, about the whole conservative approach?
Right. Yeah. Overall, Matt's tactic of making it very personal and real is, in general, a great way to go about it and make personal connections. If you're dealing with somebody who just wants to argue at kind of like an ideological level, I mean, you could bring out some dirty tricks like pitting cities against farms. You know, it's like these cities, you know, they think they're so hot, you know, making all that revenue, and people like in Middle America don't get a lick of it. You know, like people on farms are making food for those city slickers, and they're not getting compensated for it. So sometimes I like to mix in a little bit of that, but also, yeah, like Matt was saying, with people who are already working, like two-income families. Two-income families, and they might be working 5 jobs between them. It's like, how are they not getting by? It's because the system is not built to benefit them. But UBI is one way in which we reap the benefits of this prosperous economy and bring it down to people. So people just like you is what I like to say.
Yep.
So absolutely make it human. But if they're a little bit closed off, sure, do some culture war stuff.
Yeah.
We have arguments on all sides for it.
That's something I've actually doubled down on sometimes is what's the problem with LA and San Francisco? Too many damn people. Why are they there? That's where all the jobs are. Why are the jobs there? Because it's where the people are. And it's this huge cycle. Well, you can't leave LA if there's a million people fighting for the same jobs in a 4-block radius. And then you gotta, and the closer you live there, the more likely you are to get on work on time. So you got to pay all this money and yada, 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 you know. And I always tell people that universal basic income will incentivize rural development, a rural, what's it called? Like a city
Resurgence.
exodus.
Yeah.
I like using biblical terms with people like that, you know. So I say it's an exodus from the cities. I'm telling you guys, the religion thing, I'm an atheist. It works. Let's say it's a mass exodus. Imagine LA. How many people are going to stick around LA if they can get $1,000 a month and their rent's only $500 in Idaho? Well, hell yeah, you're leaving LA. Shit yeah, boy. You know, and those things work though, guys. It really is. It's not a dirty trick, Hannah. It's just cute.
Especially now with a lot of jobs going virtual.
Well, in COVID.
So
COVID's a good reason not be in a city.
Yep, 100%.
Get the hell out. Take your money and run. Go build a tiny home or buy a RV or buy a trailer in 5 acres in Wyoming, and you're good to go, man. Once they get rural internet, but that's another discussion, right? Oh man. So I guess our last question is going to be, if you have someone that you think would be a good advocate, but just wants to make 1,000 excuses, or you know what I mean, like, well, I'd like to get involved, but this, but that, maybe a butt sandwich, right? Do you guys have any tricks of the trade where you guys have had success saying, hey, just can you do this? Is this, you know, I have a couple ways I've done it personally. I just want to hear what you guys say about how do you inspire people to get activated, to become a participant in progress.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Well, I mean, I have like a general strategy that I use for people within my social circle, and it starts from like getting them introduced to UBI in a certain way, and then hopefully get them activated. So, some general this general strategy that I have is that I'm a bit of an extreme case in that I've traveled all over the country in the past year for UBI. So when I have conversations like with my friends, like my choir buddies, the topic of what I'm doing naturally, what I've been doing just kind of naturally goes towards UBI. And so the easiest way to start advocating for UBI in your social circles is by being consistently vocal about your support on social media, share articles and studies, reflect on how UBI would have helped during a recent crisis, be visible about the actions you're taking part of, like phone banking, letter writing, protesting, events, and generally become known as somebody who strongly supports UBI. But it doesn't mean that you need to be an expert on the topic in order to talk about it convincingly. You only need to be an expert on why you personally are passionate about UBI. And because it's a starting point to share at a human level why a policy like this could be beneficial to an individual or community. And if you don't have a response to an objection, be honest and say that you haven't fully figured it out yet, and continue the conversation once you learn more. And just go through the process of learning together, and it can really become a bonding experience. I mean, in fact, several people share articles and start conversations with me when they see something about UBI in the wild. So overall, it's a long game about nurturing the relationship. So UBI is a subject that's becoming more and more ubiquitous, and the part that you play is to make that conversation personal and relevant to the person you're talking with. So it's going to take more than one conversation.
Yeah. So
don't put pressure on yourself to close the deal the first time, and you're also not alone. And to that point, it's important to cultivate a network of people who also support UBI. So if you're having a conversation on social media, like on Facebook or Clubhouse, other people can jump in and provide a different perspective. And since people generally listen to people who are similar to themselves, if you get into conversation with, let's say, a conservative farmer from a red state, you might know somebody, you might know some UBI supporters in your circle who can speak to that experience, or you may be in a position to share their perspective based on the conversations you've had with them. So as a final thought, with a subject like UBI, it's really easy to get into a hypothetical, detached, cerebral analysis that turns into a bunch of what ifs and gotcha questions to try and win the argument. I'm sure we've all had that moment of clarity while going down a rabbit hole and wondered, how did we get here? So remember that no one is proposing that UBI will magically solve all the issues of like student debt, housing prices, healthcare, job loss, etc. So ultimately, it's useful to keep bringing the conversation back to real life experiences, real people, and the real problems that we're all facing, and why you believe that UBI is a practical, feasible way to start addressing those problems. And hopefully when people see the work that you're doing, they'll want to reach out and say, hey, how can I help? And there are lots of things happening right now with like income movement. Just keep your ear out for things that are happening, and just keep sharing events that are happening, and hopefully somebody will get on board and start doing it too.
Yep. What you got, Matt?
Great points, Hannah. What I know is that people appreciate the depth of your honesty more than the depth of your knowledge. So if you don't know something, just admit it. Tell them that you will find out the answer and get back to them. My experience is that when I'm dealing with a new product or a new idea, I don't have all the answers. And so when somebody asks me a question that I don't know or gives me an objection, that gives me the opportunity to figure out how to answer that for next time. So it really comes down to repetition, getting it over and over again until you get so frustrated that you say, I'm not going to miss that question or miss that objection again. I'm going to be able to cover it next time. And so that frustration for me is what finally gets me to get over that hump. So in the end, it's repetition. As Hannah said, it's a continuing conversation that evolves over time. It's planting the first seed and then continuing to water that so that you get a really strong root growth. And because you get that really strong root growth, you get a really, really strong plant above the ground that produces well.
Yes. You water the roots, not the fruits, man. You don't water an apple on the vine, man. You water it at the root. People power, you know. So we got about 15 minutes left here, guys. So we're going to open it up for Q&A. So I think that one of the other people are going to jump in with the Q&A section. I don't know. because we have a lot of stuff in here we haven't been able to address. There's a ton. So I don't know if you guys have populated some, Sean. If you want to jump in here or
Yeah, if you
whatever.
want to, there's some of them you can grab. I'll get on that.
I'll start out. Somebody was asking about VAT and how to address that.
The VAT.
The VAT.
Okay.
So the way that I address that is talking about listing a few different companies like Starbucks, Walmart, and other companies that pay next to nothing in taxes. You can always reference Trump as well. And so that's the first thing is, who pays the majority of the taxes in the country? The people do, the corporations don't. So we need to start taxing them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can talk about, did you know that advertisements on Facebook aren't being taxed? Business to business transactions, all these things. So what we want to do is we want to get our fair share of every single transaction that's happening in the entire country, if not the entire world. And that's how we're going to finance it. Then people always say, well, are you going to get our price is going to increase because of that? And I say, well, if they don't, that's great. If they do, that's fine too. If they increase 10%, now instead of paying $3 for a gallon of milk, you're paying $3.30. And then once again, it's very easy to cover that because a VAT can be tailored so that those basic amenities are not taxed.
That's the thing.
It's going to be the expensive things that we're taxing on for the rich folks, boats, all those amenities, plus all of the transactions that currently aren't taxed that need to be taxed.
Yeah, business to business, B2B.
Yep. But in the end, I always just love going back to, let's say everything does, even basic needs, increase 10%. You're still going to get $12,000 a year, and you would have to spend $120,000 a year to erase that 10%, that $12,000. $120,000 times 10% is $12,000. How many people do you know that spend $120,000 a year on everything, much less just amenities above and beyond?
Well, Claire in the comments section says, can we explain more about the business to business thing? So if I was to buy 1,000 hats from Shanghai company and they mail them here, they ship them here, and I put a little, like an Indiana thing on there, right? That adds value. Then I sell it. I upcharge it, right? So the business would pay a tax between the hat company and the seller. Like that business would pay that transaction. You pay a tax on that.
For embroidery.
Yeah, so that's adding the value. So when they charge me $2 a hat to embroider the hat, now it's $2.20. Right? So I have to, as a business owner that's profiting, whatever that number is, I'm paying 10% of the value added on that. So instead of $2, it's $2.20 a hat, right? And some of that can be passed on, but here's the thing, guys, it's an open market. Not everyone's not going to charge an extra 20 cents. They want to win. They'll charge 10 cents or 5 cents, or they're always going to have deals. That's the whole point. Like that's the open market. That's capitalism. The market will cause competition, will bring down the prices, and it'll keep them from going, I'm passing off 100% of this upcharge, and they just won't be able to. So they'll be incentivized to pass on as much as they're willing to part with, to keep your loyalty as a customer, to get your money. They'll charge just how much money can I make and still get them to buy my product again over Johnny number 2 and Jenny over 3 number 3. How do they get to buy mine? Is because I only went up 3 cents. They went up 10 cents or 5 cents or whatever. So it's business to business transactions. And here's the thing, guys. They have to pay them every quarter. They can't hide it at the end of the year and say, okay, we're going to invest in a new infrastructure in Ireland. Hey, guess what? That's a tax haven. Beautiful. How ironic. Like there's no tax haven dodgeball here. They can't escape it. It's at the moment of purchase, and then they have to pay that tax per quarter, which is business taxes. That's how I would explain it.
We're continuously collecting it, and
Yep.
You take steel and you make a widget out of that steel, and you need 15 other pieces to make that widget. Every single one of those pieces is being taxed. So
Yep, a fraction.
It's being taxed on every single transaction, and we're collecting it continually so that they can't run away and not pay that tax.
Yeah, get rid of all these loopholes, man. Just do a VAT. Voila. Hannah, do you got anything to put on that? Because I know you've got some corporate experience.
Oh, do I? In general, like I don't like to get too wonky about policy, just because like if we get too into the weeds about how it's going to get paid, it kind of loses the reason why UBI is a good policy. So I don't want to lose the argument based on like details, because there are other ways of paying for a UBI, especially when we're talking about citywide or statewide UBI proposals. I mean, there's like land value tax. I mean, there's like digital privacy data, financial transaction taxes. So there's lots of different ways that we could possibly fund it. But in general, I do like the idea of a VAT. It's fairly easy, just like tax on transactions only. People can't escape it. If they want to move to another country, well, you know what? Most developed countries have a VAT, so you're going to be paying it somewhere. So yeah, in general, yeah, all the things that Matt and Boyce have said about that apply to me as well.
Well, here's the other thing, guys. I always tell people it's a consumption tax at the point of sale too. So if I buy diapers, it can be manipulated. That's not something that doesn't get the VAT, just regular sales tax, right? But if it's a boat or a third house or a $250 pair of Jordans, then that $250 is going to be $252.75. You know, like it's going to be another couple bucks, and it's not going to make you not buy the shoe. So that's what I tell people is the people that have excess income. And so who does the most consumption? The people that have the most resources, period. And that's why it's going to be taxed most at the higher, the more you make, the more you pay in taxes, because the more you spend.
We trust the government with those taxes to get back to us.
What's that?
Those taxes are going to come back to the people. The government's not going to waste it.
That's what universal basic income is.
And mishandle it.
Universal basic income. That's what it's for, to fund that. That's
okay.
Part of the, that's how, so what it is they collect taxes every quarter, and then you and I and everybody we know gets a monthly tax return, not just once a year. We get it every month. It's the same thing. People aren't going to quit their jobs. They're not going to stop doing everything, right? So you get a monthly tax return. Is what it is. It's a tax cut for the middle class, and then the tax, and then the people that are poorest. It's just that it's a better way of getting the money to recycle through the communities as well. But we also have another question: is how do you address criticisms that UBI will cause America to be less competitive in the global economy because there won't be enough incentives for people to work?
Right now, the current welfare system disincentivizes people to work.
Yeah.
As Boyce spoke about earlier.
Yep.
With UBI, those people that are already disincentivized to work, maybe they will continue to not work, and that's fine. That's their prerogative.
That's their life. Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is adding $12,000 to everybody's bank account every year, it's going to incentivize people to continue to work because they can make even more money.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's going to incentivize them to do what they love. A lot of people have hobbies that make them $500, $1,000 a month, but it's not enough to live on.
Mm-hmm.
Having your basic needs covered will allow more people to do what they want to instead of what they have to, and turn their hobbies into an actual business from which they can live off of.
It'll explode
that opportunity.
It'll explode the arts, period. We need that because art is a reflection of society. So if you have no art, you are in bad shape. Everyone's depressed. Nobody's in the mood to even paint, to write a lyric, to make music, any of that stuff. So art is like, I just think it's a barometer for society.
Music and art are the soul of society.
Yeah. It's a mirror, you know, and right now we have lean rapping, mumble rappers. It's all about drugs. I wonder why, because it's a drug epidemic, you know, you know, so art imitates life and life imitates art. So we just gotta be a little more positive too. But yeah, I think that when it comes to saying that a VAT would make the United States less competitive is silly, because they don't, like Hannah was saying, an average VAT in Europe is 20%. That's the average VAT. It's about what it is. There's some countries that are 10 to 15, but it's usually around 20 to 22. I think England is 20 according. Yeah. Last I checked, England was like 20 or 22%. And some countries do it like the more expensive the thing is, or more luxurious, the luxury that it is, they can increase it. They have like tier systems in some places too. It can all be manipulated by the people to say, This is going to be higher tax because that's where we can capture the most income. Let's be real. It's all about collecting taxes and paying your bills, which we suck at currently. But yeah, I don't, let me look here back in the comments, guys. Yeah, depression. That's an, I want to address one more thing because I know we got about 7 more minutes here. Mental health. I personally believe that universal basic income is an automatic pill, a dose of hope that says, if you got $1,000 today from the Biden administration, yay. If you knew it's coming every single month, you get to think ahead and not worry about this weekend. Okay, am I going to be able to pay my bills this week? My phone's going to get shut off. Now I can't do my online job, or my computer's not going to get this and that, and my heat's going to go off. Like once you're past that thing about survival, you can look ahead, man. I think mental health, overdoses, abuse, domestic violence. Okay, I've been divorced twice, so I got some authority here, right? Number 2 reasons, top 3 reasons for divorce: money, kids, infidelity, right? Money is the number 1. It is the number 1 reason people argue over money, where it should go. We don't have enough, da 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 da. And then of course it's kids and upbringing. Then it's infidelity. But also depression. Think about if you're depressed and if both people in a relationship are depressed, it's not a good relationship eventually. And it's gonna. I would think it would decrease divorces and hopefully increase people getting married, which is good for society.
That's very correct. There's so many people that aren't getting married because they're not financially stable enough, or they're not buying homes because they're not financially stable enough.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many countries where the birth rate has dramatically decreased.
Yeah.
Because of those factors. So
ours is going down. The United States birth rate is going down 2% on average right now.
Well, think about it. Millennials don't have enough money to take care of even themselves.
Mm.
Marriage, kids, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: you can't go, and if you're on welfare, you cannot afford to get married. You lose benefits, so it disincentivizes what do you call that? The whatever the conservative talking about
family.
The core family thingy. What do you call that? Yeah. Nuclear family. Thank you, Hannah. Yes, the nuclear family.
Yeah, nuclear.
Yes. So, mental health, man, it's a big problem in the United States and around the world. And I think that universal basic income could be a huge a boost in that area. So we got
have a big impact.
Definitely. So we got we got 5 minutes left. Yeah, go ahead, Hannah.
Oh yeah, I just think that there's also an interesting discussion to have about the future of work, and especially with millennials and Gen Z coming up in the workforce, and just seeing that there is no meaning to their lives. Like, is this what they're looking forward to in terms of work? Just doing minimum wage jobs or jobs that are entirely bullshit. It doesn't need to happen. Like, they're just working jobs that are there to just create widgets that nobody wants. So I feel like with universal basic income, it's not just about unloading the mental stress of not having your basic needs met, but also freeing yourself up to find meaning in your life that is not this stupid job. Right.
Yeah.
So having the leisure time or being able to walk away from a job that is not fulfilling. I'm sure there's plenty of people who say, I would rather do anything than work this job, fuck that salary. So, and so just having that floor, that consistent income gives people a way to actually take risks,
yes.
Hey, maybe I will run off to LA for a year and try to make it in acting. And that frees people up to do these things that rich people have been afforded that security for a long time. So it really opens up a lot of opportunity for people to find what they really find meaningful in life. And it doesn't necessarily have to be working for pay.
Yeah.
Right. It would allow so many more people who want to be teachers or who want to do a meaningful job, but realize that it's not going to, the financial hardships that come with because it doesn't pay enough would allow them to actually do that meaningful job. I mean, we have, the U.S. is so low on teachers. We need more teachers, but people go into college to become teachers and they realize that the pay is so low. That's not what they want to do.
Yeah, they can't afford
So-
to pursue their passion.
Yep,
That's it.
100%.
That's
You
it.
can't afford to pursue your passion, and UBI would
Mhm.
allow more people to do that.
Yep. And so we got a couple minutes left. I just want to jump back in with Sean because he has some last second things they want to talk about. Reminder for upcoming policy nerd nights and how to register. I think Sean, right?
Yeah, and that's right. So once again, this event is brought to you by California Yang Gang. We will have more and more of these events, at least one every month, as well as other speakers and moderators like you've seen tonight. I just wanted to, I'm popping them into the chat right now. Just some links if you wanted to get involved with either UBI advocacy or just activism in general. There's some of these links that our guests have shared earlier. If you wanted to participate in the California Yang Gang's activities, feel free to join our Slack. Make sure you check out thetrickle-up.com to stay tuned to more of these exciting videos from Boyce, and as well as getting involved with Inca Movement, who we work with a lot and who does a lot of work in UBI advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to take one last time to thank our speakers, Boyce for his amazing moderation and insights, as well as Matt Austin for his 100,000 doors of experience, and Hannah Wan for the a million magical things she's done for society. So
Yeah.
thank you all of our speakers and all of our guests who politely attended. So,
And hey, man, totally no shade, brother. I hope your dog's all right, man. That sucks.
yeah, our hearts go out to Tully.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for attending. We
Hell
really
yeah.
enjoyed being a part of this.
And I would gladly do it again if you guys need me to become moderator or whatever, man. This is a good time to me. This is always this gives me energy. This is good for depression, if you will. Like this gives me, they call it filling your bucket up, you know. It's good stuff.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was really great, and I hope to see a lot of you on social media somewhere so we can connect and have more of these conversations.
And just make sure you guys, if you're gonna go, make sure you go when you go to that bit.ly thing in the link in the where is it at? In the comment section, you put that here, the links and stuff. There it is. I'll put this in the description box on my channel as well. But how do they get alerts for the upcoming? Because it's not on a consistent schedule yet. Like, when's the next one?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So everyone that's attended will hear you will receive a real quick survey email that'll come out by tomorrow. If you want to hear more stuff about what we do and similar events, you can, there'll be a question. You can jump on our newsletter. If you don't want to, that's fine. We won't bombard you with emails. But if you'd like to hear more or even have any input on future events, feel free to let us know. And additionally, if there's topics you'd like to see or people you think we should have on, that'll be a way for you to give input. So
Awesome.
look out for that.
All right. Did you guys want to start? Did you stop the recording already, or?
We've stopped already.
Okay, cool.
Without further ado, I suppose we'll cut it there. Thank you,
Yeah, man.
everyone, for stopping by, and have a great weekend.
Hey, bro, how great was that? It's 10:30 on the dot, man. I moderated the shit out of that ending.
Bye, y'all.
All right, guys. Yang gang. UBI.
Gang, gang.
All right, guys. So that was a lot of fun, man. But yeah, James, I didn't get to thank you in person during that live stream of that event, man. But I really appreciate your shout out. You always come through, man. What's this say? Busy, a new trucking job. Haven't been on Twitter or YouTube in a long time. Love the conversations. Yeah, man. Appreciate you, brother. Yeah, we're gonna keep doing stuff like this. I'm gonna do more panels in the future as well. On Sunday, we're gonna be doing a live stream news coverage on the daily on the Trickle Up on Sunday night with Trumper for Yang. And then on Monday it's gonna be Nerds is gonna join me in studio. So we're gonna do more stuff like this. We're gonna cover the news on Sunday and Monday. And then Sunday, Monday, then one's on Tuesday too. Let me go check this out. Just to give you guys a heads up of what's coming. Oops. So then Tuesday, I'll be live streaming with Sheridan Lund. He's running for Congress in 2022. So then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we'll be going live on the Trickle Up and the YouTube, or on Trickle Up's YouTube channel and on the Mindful Skeptics. I'm trying to really pump up the YouTube participation on the Trickle Up more than my own. So if you guys do watch it, please keep coming on to Trickle Up's YouTube. I'm going to try and build this thing up so we can keep kicking some ass. But yes, let me get out of here, man. I'm gonna go catch up my girlfriend. She's waiting politely in the other room reading a book. But guys, thanks again for joining me, man. Yang gang all day, all the way, man.